to give the sources. And then he talked to the audience and says, you have to give sources which prove your points. It's very important because anyone can give views. Anyone can say anything. But if you can point to your sources and give specific references, then you are in a stronger position. Even if people will reject that as a proof, you still know for yourself that this is the proof. And that's what he said. Within Judaism, you find sources within Judaism, not within history, within psychology, within medicine, within politics and government, within Balfour Declarations and League of Nations mandates. No, you find the source for our legitimacy and our claim to the land and our claim to who we are from Judaism, from the Torah that is our progenitor. Amen. Because if you don't prove it out from Judaism itself, and to do that you have to know what Judaism really is, then your Judaism or your point of view is Cohenism if your last name is Cohen. It's not Judaism. All you are, you're your own God. You're your own guide, deciding what's good and what's bad, and what you'll do and what you won't do in life. And that's not Judaism. That's your own personal bias and prejudice.
That's blasphemy.
Well, besides all that. Otherwise, if you're not going to give sources for your views within Judaism, which is fine, he said. You want to be outside of Judaism, even if you're a Jew, we know that that's not the right approach. And we're telling you right now you're going to get in trouble for choosing and opting out of Judaism. But at least you've opted out. You're not being a fraud like the Reform and Conservative movement who say they are Judaism, but they're changing everything. Right. And so it's completely corrupted and undermined and distorted, and comes out totally saying things that are the opposite in many cases of what real Judaism teaches. So it's fine. You want to be outside of Judaism, but don't come in and say you're in Judaism if you're not really in Judaism. Don't call it Judaism. Call it what it is. It's Cohenism. It's your own personal views. The first time we find this promise of Hashem, of God, that He will create a special people, is to Avram Avinu in last week's Parsha. And I promised myself that when I would give over these words, I would look up every one of these passages and read to you, at least in English. If we have time, I'll read in Hebrew and English, the reference and the point, because he read them out. I didn't copy it out, because thank God, I know where to look it up. I wrote down Bereshis 17, verses 7 and 8 in Lech Lecha, last week's Parsha. And here's what that verse says. And this is the first of the building blocks and the stepping stone of the foundation of the Jewish people and the land of Israel belonging to us. Genesis, Bereshis 17, verse 7 and 8. Hashem says to Abraham, when he was 99 years old, when he was 99 years old, and was about to do the covenant with him, the Bris Milah, in order to enter a special relationship with Hashem, after 99 years of life, where Hashem had done all these things for him, and he become a follower of Hashem and a proclaimer of Hashem's mastery over the world and creation of the world, and that He's the only God. He had already lived a full life, but now he's asked to do even more, to become the first Jew by this Bris Milah and enter into a pact with Hashem. And he says, I will ratify my covenant that I'm asking you to do. I will ratify my covenant between me and you, and between your offspring after you, throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant to be a God to you and to your offspring after you. And I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land of your sojourning where you dwell, where Lech Lecha I told you to go to, the whole of the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession, and I shall be a God to them. To your progeny from Yitzhak, Yaakov, and we're going to flesh this out in a later shir of what Hashem was saying here that makes us totally different than all the other nations of the world. That'll be hopefully in a couple weeks when we get further into this lecture that Rabbi Meir gave over. I want to, for the Yortzeit, just stay on his words, and we'll flesh it out more than he goes into in this. He went into in this shir. In all his other writings that I've gleaned from all his other writings, he explains this perfectly, of what the meaning of these words that Hashem has now said to Avram Avinu. Rabbi Meir read this out, and it says, "I will establish my covenant between me and you." He said, "Between me and thee," because his Tanakh that he carried around all the time, something like this, was the Old English. The nation has not been born yet, Rabbi Meir said, but the promise of a nation is given. And the father of that nation is chosen. Of all the people in the human race, Avram Avinu has proven himself to be worthy of this title, of this position in world history. That of all the people in the world, he only found Noach and he saved him in a boat and destroyed the rest of the world. And Chazal say, our sages say, that the world deserved another destruction. Wouldn't be by water because he promised never to bring it by water. But Hashem has so many other ways he could destroy the world, God forbid, if he wanted to, if we deserved it. But because Avram he found in the world was so much greater than Noach had been, so Avraham Avinu saved the whole world from being destroyed and decimated, even though they deserved it by Avram Avinu's time, as we'll see a little later. So he's the father of this nation. He's the one who's chosen to lead it and to sire it, to give birth to it. Furthermore, Hashem essentially said to Avram, "From you and through you I begin a nation, and the nation will be a chosen nation. I have chosen them." Hashem also adds. Meir says that when you read these psukim, you see he's including his progeny. Not all his progeny, as we'll see. He's from Yitzhak to Yaakov, Yaakov to the 12 tribes, and on down to us. He's including all of us in history into this covenant at this point with Avram Avinu. Furthermore, not only a nation, but also a land, he says, he will give to this people that I'm going to make through you, Avram Avinu. And he says, we'll come back to what the land figures in, how it melts in, and explains its importance of why it's so crucial that we have our own land. So furthermore, not only a nation, but also a land will be given to you. And we'll come back to this question of a land, because the Jewish people are not only a chosen special people, chosen, of course, in a very special way, but it is not just a nationality, it's not just a ethnicity, if you will. It is the only religious nation, per se. That the tenets of what makes you Jewish is that you keep these laws. They're the only religio nation in history. And here, if I may be allowed an aside, I wanted to do the aside next week, but briefly we'll come back to it next week. No, I don't want to do the aside now. This is Ramirez Yortzeit coming up. I'll do there's something that has to fill in the gaps here, and I'll try and do it next time before we continue the shir. This is his Yortzeit. I want to stick to Ramirez's words. So it's a chosen people, And it is the only religious nation in history to be a land-centered people. There are other religions and there are other peoples, but they don't have land central to their religion and to their peoplehood. And he said many times in many lectures and wrote it in many books that to be a good Christian, you never have to step foot, a Catholic, you never have to step foot in Rome a day in your life. Just keep Catholicism wherever you are in the world, you're a good Catholic. To be a good Muslim in Islam, all you have to do is make a Hajj to Mecca once in your lifetime and you fulfill your requirement. But not only do the Jewish people have a mitzvah later in the Torah that talks about them going up each holiday, Pesach, Passover, Shavuos, and Sukkot, to go up to the Beis Hamikdash, and if you're living outside the land, to go to Eretz Yisrael to fulfill this mitzvah. But technically, Judaism, Torah teaches that in order to fulfill Torah in Judaism, you have to be living in the land of Israel full time. That's the obligation, that's the mitzvah, and he goes into that. And he says that the land is central for the people. For the people are not just any other people like everybody else. We have a calling, a special calling that makes us a different kind of people from the rest of the nations on the earth. One doesn't have to live in Rome to be a good Catholic, so he says it right here. One only has to make one Hajj, a pilgrimage to Mecca for Islam in one's lifetime to be a good Muslim. You don't have to live in Saudi Arabia around the year. And but in verse 8, which I read you, it's all about the land. And Hashem being our God in this land that he's giving to us. He told Avram, you're going to be my special representative, my special people. You're going to be the progenitor of this nation. I make a covenant with you. And I give you a land. We don't know why, when, where, how. We can, well, he says Eretz Canaan. We do know where. We don't know when. And we don't know what for. We know why. Because Hashem wants to give Avram this land. But we'll see the reasons. So he said at this point in the Shir, Arabs oftentimes jump on this and say, you see, we too are the seed of Avram Avinu, Abraham, so we have an equal share in the land as well. Says Avram Avinu. Avram had two sons, Yitzhak and Yishmael. So Avram and his seed promised the land. So Yishmael was also Avram's son. Not just Yitzhak. And Jews who know nothing about Torah, about the Bible, about Chumash, about Tanakh, about Judaism, about anything else Jewish, will say, oh, that sounds good, that sounds right. It's justice, we share the land. Sounds right. Later, in the same chapter that we just quoted from chapter 17, verse 7 and 8, 10 psukim later, in Pasuk 18 and 19 and 20, Shem says to Avram Avinu, and Avram, when he was told to do this bris milah, and he will have a son from Sarah finally after all these years, he's 100, Sarah's 90, they never had kids, right? And Yishmael was born when Avram was 86 years old. So now it's, right, it's from Hagar, a different wife, a maidservant. So Avram, when he was told that Sarah is going to have this, their name's going to be changed from Avram and Sarai to Abraham and Sarah. And Avram threw himself upon his face and laughed. And he thought, shall a child be born to a 100-year-old man? And shall Sarah, a 90-year-old woman, give birth? And Avram said to God, listen carefully, And Avram said to God at this point, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before you," meaning and be chosen too and be part of this people. God said, nonetheless, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you shall call his name Yitzhak, and I will fulfill my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. But regarding Ishmael, I have heard you, I have blessed him, I will make him fruitful, and will increase him most exceedingly. He wasn't given greatness of achievement, he was given greatness of population. He will beget 12 tribes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will maintain my covenant, verse 21 now, but I will maintain my covenant through Yitzchak, whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year. And you see from this pasuk, Hashem dividing between Yishmael and Yitzhak. And Yishmael is rejected as worthy of being the second foundation of the peoplehood of the Jewish people. And he says, through Yitzhak, you will have been called having progeny. He says in the Hebrew, no, that's not here. That's somewhere else. He says, "Ves brisi akim es Yitzchak, asher teled lecha Sarah, lemoed hazeh b'shana ha'echeres." I'll give you Yitzhak this time next year. Oh no, it is. It's Yud Ches and Yud Tes. V'yomer Elohim aval Sarah ishtecha yoledes lecha bein v'karas es shmo Yitzhak v'akimosi es brisi ito levris olam lezarach rav. U'lishmo. So I have to find this pasuk for you. Okay, I'm going to continue now. I'm pretty sure Rameir will quote this, but I thought this pasuk that I'm thinking of is right here, that it says, but through Yitzhak will be called Zerah. Perhaps it was earlier. Wow. Okay, it's not here. It's not where I thought it was. Okay. All right, let's see. Romero mentioned it. I'll find the pasuk later. So we have now the rejection of Yishmael. And Yitzhak is chosen. He hasn't been born yet. But my covenant I will establish with Yitzchak, is what Hashem said in verse 18, 19, and 20. So Romero said, first of all, when did the Arabs ever look upon the Bible as any kind of source of proof for legitimacy? They always rejected that. Never. You made it up or you corrupted it. But more importantly, clearly it demarcates between the two sons. So if they are going to use the Bible already to try and prove their claim, to prove their point, so then it's very important that people don't pick and choose. Use it all. Every word's holy or none of it's holy. And therefore, if you want to use one verse, you've got to accept all of them. And especially the one verse you're quoting, finish it. At the end of this verse that says that they wish to utilize in their answer as to how much to Eretz Yisrael they deserve an equal share, you see how very wrong they are. They've taken this verse out of complete context, and you should never take anything out of context. And you have to read the end of the verse. The verse said, if you remember, the verse said, that Avram said, would it, oh, that Yishmael might live before you. And God said, okay, but nonetheless, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you shall call his name Yitzchak, and I will fulfill my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. But regarding Yishmael, I have heard you. I will make him, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful, and will increase him most exceedingly. He will beget 12 tribes, and I will make him into a great nation, meaning a separate nation from you. And then, verse 21, but I will maintain my covenant through Yitzhak, whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year. So, you see from this that the covenant will be established with Yitzhak, not Yishmael. Says it clearly, Yishmael will be a great people, etc. But with Yitzhak, and over here it says the seed, is quite clear who it is. The seed that will have a covenant with God to continue the covenant and the legacy that began with my covenant with Abraham will be Yitzhak and not Yishmael. And Yitzhak will inherit the land, not Yishmael. Yishmael will be a great man and a prince. And everything else but my covenant I will establish with Yitzchak. That's clear. And not with Yishmael. And I'll give you everything I said and promised to you with Yishmael because he's your son, and I will bless him because he's your son. But through Yitzhak, I will establish with Yitzhak the continuation of the covenant I'm making with you now to do the bris milah. So the promise then continues to Yitzhak from Abraham. And later on, after Abraham dies, in Bereshis 26, Parshas Toldos, which talks about Yitzhak and Rivka giving birth to Yaakov, in Bereshis 26, verses 1 through 5, it says there was a famine in the land. Aside from the famine, the first famine that was in the days of Abraham, this is after Abraham had died, and Yitzhak went to Avimelech, the king of the Plishtim, to Gerar, which is basically near Gaza. Hashem appeared to him and said, do not descend to Egypt. He thought he would go down to Egypt, following the path and the example set by his father. He went down to Egypt in the famine. I'll go down there for a while until the things are better to come back. And Hashem appeared to Yitzhak and said to him, do not descend to Egypt. Dwell in the land that I shall indicate to you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and your offspring will I give all these lands. Will I give all these lands, and establish the oath that I swore to Abraham your father. I will increase your offspring like the stars of the heavens, and will give to your offspring all these lands. And all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your offspring, because Abraham, your father, obeyed my voice and observed my safeguards, my commandments, my decrees, and my Torah. And so Yitzhak dwelled in Gerar. First of all, you see, the Plishtim were not Canaanim. The Plishtim land belonged also to Eretz Yisrael that Hashem wanted to give to the Jewish people. And it's not true that Gaza is not part of Eretz Yisrael, like many people claim. They just don't know the Torah properly. Hashem clearly here says,